Okay, I think everybody, I think everybody is connected. Um, we have a few opening procedures that we follow. Welcome to the Windsor-Essex Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan meeting for the Town of Kingsville. It's a real pleasure to have you here tonight, and we really appreciate you making the time. It's a great contribution that you're making. If we can jump to the next slide, though we're all meeting virtually, it's our tradition that we acknowledge the lands that we would be on were we together. And so today we meet on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. And we respect the long-standing relationships with First Nations people in this place, in the 100-mile Windsor-Essex Peninsula and the Straits Les Detroits of Detroit. So if we could have the next slide, we'll get a quick video greeting from the leaders of the process.
Hello, on behalf of all of us at the Windsor-Essex Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Systems Leadership Table, we want to thank you for your interest in the development of our region's first ever Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Together, our goal is to build a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met across the region.
We want to hear from you. We want to understand what your priorities and concerns are for the safety and well-being of our community so that we can create a plan to advance the interests of all residents across Windsor and the County of Essex. So please make your voice heard by participating in our online survey,
or by registering for one of the virtual public meetings happening in each of the region's 8 municipalities. To get involved, visit us online at CSWBWindsorEssex.ca. And thank you from all of us.
I should just acknowledge the leadership of the team. They've been doing a terrific job, and we're actually very fortunate tonight to be joined by Mary Birch, who's one of the faces that you just saw welcoming us. And so you'll get a chance to hear from her in due course through the interactive aspects of the participation. But thank you for being here, Mary. We really appreciate it. There's just a couple of welcome and housekeeping matters that we first have to deal with. I know we're, I guess, grimly coming up into a year of dealing with meetings in this format instead of having the luxury of being able to meet in person, but there are just a few things to remind everybody of. The most important thing is to try and keep yourself muted unless you're actually trying to speak. And of course, there's two ways to achieve that. One is either by clicking the microphone symbol that you see on the very bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can also use the mute button that's on your computer or your telephone. We are your partners in maintaining the quality of sound. So if you're having a sound moment, we may mute you just to try and keep things working smoothly, but don't worry, we will just as smoothly and quickly unmute you as soon as it comes time to talk. So and please feel free to unmute yourself when you'd like to speak. Now, we are going to be using a breakout session format for most of this evening. So that means it's possible to be quite informal. We found we'll probably have between, perhaps 5 or perhaps 6 people plus a facilitator in a room, which means it's possible to manage it almost like we're at each other's kitchen tables together. But if you do need to get the attention, this works really well, actually, but so too does pressing the little button that's the raise hand function. You're also very welcome to put comments into the chat box, and those will be processed, whatever type of comment that might be. If you require closed captioning, we do have the services of closed captioning here, and you can enable it on your screen by pressing the little CC box, which you see that's at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical issues, you see that one of the identities on the screen is CSWB Windsor. You can access that mailbox. You'll actually find Lindsay Rive behind that mailbox, and she's our technical wizard, and she can help you with anything that you might need assistance with by way of technology over the course of the session. There's just two other quick points. One is that we'll be monitoring the discussion, and we of course reserve the right to delete any comments or remove any participants that are making inappropriate comments, because it's a community safety and well-being plan, and this has to be a safe space for everybody to participate. But you know, we say that as a matter of record, and that everybody who's here is here because they're giving to the community, and we certainly haven't had to do anything like that yet. We don't anticipate we will. But just so you understand what our function is here and the requirements of making this a safe space. The other thing is, I see many of you have your cameras on, and that's terrific. It actually makes it a more personable environment for sharing information. But if you're not comfortable with that, by all means, leave it off. That is your choice entirely. Do bear in mind that the end results of the process will be put up on the web. So if you're in any way uncomfortable with having a picture, then by all means, just leave it off. That's entirely acceptable. There's just a couple of other introductory matters. The real focus of this evening is hearing from you. So the welcome and introductions is just about done. We'll very soon move into an overview of the community safety and well-being planning process. There'll be a quick opportunity for questions that you might have about the process, and then we will roll into breakout sessions. And the purpose of the breakout sessions is to have you give us your direct input on matters of importance to you, and we'll take you through all those questions in due course. And then, as we typically would have if we were all in the same room together, there'll be an opportunity for a report back and group discussion, so you'll be able to hear what the other group was talking about, or groups were talking about, and make sure that you can add any thoughts that might have occurred to you over the course of the evening. So that's what the agenda is going to look like. Just a few quick introductions. Notwithstanding the wild variance in hair lengths, that really is me in the picture there from an earlier era, more streamlined and before the ban on visiting hair salons, I guess. But my name's John Matheson, and I'm the engagement partner for Strategy Corp. I'm joined this by Olivia Lahi, who's here and been working with me on the project for quite a while. We also, from Workforce Essex, we have Lindsay Rive, who I already mentioned is our IT person for this evening, as well as a support team member for the project. We have Michelle Sushu, and we have Leo Gill. Leo Gill has been the project manager, has been working tirelessly on this for months now, and he's been a terrific colleague to work with. Leo is going to provide you with a quick introduction to the overall process, and then we'll have a little bit of background on some of the findings from the current state report on the statistics side of things, and then we'll roll right into the interactive portion. So Leo, over to you.
Thanks, John. And so, yes, welcome everyone and thank you for coming out tonight. It's great to see so many people enthusiastic about community safety and well-being, so thank you. To start, I like to kind of answer the first question that's on the screen there. What is community safety and well-being planning? And really, CSWB planning is truly about creating a collaborative approach to service delivery, and one that involves multiple sectors and community partners, and is focused on being proactive and preventative. All of this is for the goal of addressing local priorities related to crime and complex social issues. And really, to do this, municipal and regional leaders are working together with partners from across several different fields with the goal of creating a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met. And what I like to kind of point out here is that something that's really important about these goals and the approach itself is that it recognizes that there are factors that influence our feelings of safety and well-being that go beyond whether an incident or whether a crime has occurred. It can be things like stigma or discrimination, or even a lack of access to resources. And in addition to that, the approach recognizes that for every risk, there's a community strength and asset, and that these should be our building blocks. And finally, that everyone has a role to play in improving our safety and well-being. Another question that's asked is, why are we undertaking this project now? And while over the past 2 decades, provincial data and research focusing on how to address some of today's really complex social issues have highlighted the need and importance of prevention, crime prevention, for instance, or strengthening communities and involving different sectors and different partners in the solution-making process. And based on this research, in 2018, the provincial government passed legislation that required all municipalities to prepare and adopt a CSWB plan. But beyond just that it was legislated, there's a lot of great local benefits to this plan and to these types of plans, and that I'll discuss shortly. Next slide, please. One thing that I do like to kind of jump in before we get to that point is just break down a little bit about the framework that's involved in this process. And really, the framework identifies 4 areas of intervention. At the top there is social development, followed by prevention, risk intervention, and incident response. Commonly, when we think of safety interventions, we tend to focus on the center of the bullseye at the incident itself, and tend to approach it from a policing or emergency services perspective. But again, research is showing that first responders are being called to situations related to well-being that are symptoms of larger issues, like a mental health crisis or even housing insecurity. And these are issues that first responders can't solve alone and should be working collaboratively with other partners. And so another way to look at it, if we move up a layer to the risk intervention section there, this layer is focusing on reducing harm before it gets to the point of an incident. And this type of work is usually not focused about creating community-wide strategies, and instead is more so about focusing on providing wraparound services to particular individuals in need. The next layer, though, prevention, really involves us all, and it's about proactively identifying and addressing local risks before they escalate. And all community members, groups, and sectors have a role to play in this layer. And finally, at the top layer, social development, this is really involving longer term investments or strategies to improve larger scale issues like access to income, education, or quality housing, to name a few. And work in this layer involves us looking beyond the incident at the social causes and understanding that those causes need integrated and collective responses. So to just pull some of these concepts together, if instead of focusing on the incident as the starting point, we started at the social development layer, then we can build on protective factors and strengths. We can emphasize prevention and risk mitigation strategies through things like data, and ultimately work to reduce the number of incidents we need to respond to by intervening before challenges become crises. And that's the overall kind of goal of this project. Next slide, please. And so now that we have a bit of background on the project, I just want to quickly jump into the Windsor-Essex Approach. And the plan is really being developed in a joint city-county approach. So while it is developed through regional collaboration, the plan is going to include appendices and data profiles for each municipality. And the intent here is to ensure that local priorities in each municipality are identified and understood. Because while there may be some similarities across municipalities, there are also unique needs and unique strengths and unique challenges for each municipality. So it's important for us to dive a bit deeper from that level. So guiding plan development are really 2 kind of great teams here. There's the Regional Systems Leadership Table and the Enhanced Sector Network. The Systems Leadership Table is made up of leaders from across multiple sectors like health and mental health, education, community and social services, law enforcement, and public safety, to name a few. The Enhanced Sector Network is consisting of frontline staff and members of community organizations and committees that work alongside 8 historically underrepresented communities. And these communities include First Nations and Indigenous peoples, racialized persons, newcomers, youth, seniors, 2S LGBTQ+ folk, accessibility communities, and also broader community groups that tend to work alongside with individuals with lived experiences of homelessness or substance use. And they're helping us really narrow down the scope of the project to figure out what should we be starting on, what should be the starting strategic priorities for this, and really helping us by identifying priority risk factors, identifying strategies to reduce those risk factors, and also setting measurable outcomes to make sure we can track our progress. Next slide. So as I mentioned beforehand, there is a number of different benefits that come with these types of plans. And really one of the things that we need to start off with is not reinventing the wheel and understanding that we can take advantage of the community's existing strengths, resources, and best practices, and utilize those to create proactive approaches to address identified risks. And in doing that, really, the plans across the province have been showing that they tend to enhance communication and collaboration across agencies and organizations. And that enhanced communication leads to a better understanding of local risks and vulnerable groups, and also ensures that services are provided to individuals who may have more complex needs. Ultimately, with this increased awareness, there's increased coordination and access that can help community members and vulnerable groups obtain the right services at the right time. So that's overall what these types of plans tend to achieve. Next slide, please. And so in our case, as with many things in 2020, there was a bit of a pause because of COVID-19. But after that pause, we relaunched in June 2020. And since that relaunch, we were able to develop a current state data report and an interactive asset map, both of which will be made public in the coming weeks. And we also were able to connect with each municipality to provide elected officials from each council information about the project. And then through the Enhanced Sector Network, we were able to engage 96 frontline staff and representatives from existing committees and organizations. And they were involved in contextualizing some of that data. And they're also going to be involved in prioritizing community risk factors. So once we've completed public consultations like this, the virtual town halls, as well as our online survey, the data will be analyzed and will be involved in developing the final report that we would be submitting to municipal and county councils for adoption. We expect the plan to be fully completed and made public by the end of the year. So with that, I'm just going to go to the next slide and open it up to any questions that you may have about the process that I'd be glad to answer for you.
No questions in the chat box, Leo.
Okay, great. I was going to say, if there are no questions right now, if later on a question pops in your head, during the regroup, you can feel free to ask a question. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it over to Olivia so she can go through the data portion of this presentation.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, everyone. So as Leo mentioned, developing a current state data report was one of the prior steps before coming into our public consultations. And the point of that was to create a baseline to assess safety and well-being in the communities today, and also to find areas where it could be improved in the future. We looked at a lot of different types of data sets that included municipal data, including housing and financial services and financial services data, police services information on things like crime, StatsCan for a number of data points, as well as provincial data points like EQAO scores for education. And the point of that is basically to look at a really broad range of factors that impact safety and well-being, so we can assess not only incidents of crime, but also the underlying causes of that behavior. For those who might be on the phone, I'll read them. Our broad categories of the data report included crime and victimization, education, financial security, mental health and substance use, physical health, housing and neighborhoods, and COVID-19. As a distinct category, though, we acknowledge that COVID-19 has had direct impacts on all of these categories, and so we treat it separately, but also in an integrated way as well. Next slide, please. So we do create municipal profiles based on these included in the data report. And we do have one for Kingsville to walk through with everyone, but it's worth noting ahead of time that this is a snapshot. It's one perspective of Kingsville. One specific point worth noting is, in doing something like this in a census year, we're a bit limited in that the most recent data we have is from 2016. So, and I only say this because as Leo mentioned, we have a lot of other tools to contextualize this data. And while it's really important to look at the data, it's just one perspective and part of several perspectives that we need to collect in creating these municipal profiles and identifying the priority risks. So next slide, please. So I say that Kingsville is has a huge agricultural sector, a lot of greenhouses, making it an agricultural hub for the region and in the area at large. It has its own unique challenges and strengths. And so a couple of those include rates of violent and drug crime being in line with regional averages, property and traffic crimes being well below regional averages, and in general, the town having a lot less severe crime than regional averages. On the education side, the town has more adults with only a high school diploma, but otherwise educational attainment is in line with regional averages as of 2016. Residents in the town have a higher median household income, and child poverty is below regional averages as well, and declining. Residents of the town spend a smaller portion of their income on shelter, and more residents own their homes as opposed to renting than the regional averages. The town strategic plan focuses on encouraging and managing growth in a sustainable manner. This is not an all-inclusive list, but we've pulled out some of the priorities from the strategic plan that focus on community safety and well-being, and they include promoting public safety through improved communication and education, improving recreational, arts, and cultural facilities within the town, supporting businesses, development, expansion, and retention, managing residential growth through planning. So as I say, this is kind of one by the numbers snapshot of Kingsville, and a large reason that we have these public consultations is to help provide some color and some context to this snapshot. So with that, if we go to the next slide, we will go into breakout rooms. As John mentioned, we have a number of questions, and we'll divide into smaller groups to facilitate some more informal discussions so that we can go through 5 questions that we have with you guys. Each group will have a moderator who's a part of our team, and our role is there to make sure everyone is able to contribute, and also make sure that we're able to get answers, to get through all the questions and hear from everybody on all the topics. So after that, we'll have about 45 minutes doing that, and afterwards, as John mentioned, we'll return to the group and kind of summarize what everyone was talking about and give anyone a chance to add anything else. So with that, you should automatically be placed in a group. Just make sure you click join when that pops up, and we'll see you in the groups.